Hello, friends, and welcome back to The Free Advantage. I'm your host, Heather Davis, and I want to invite you into a new season of real stories, real recovery, and real freedom. This show has always been about self-discovery, authenticity, and recovering a life of freedom. And this year, we are taking that journey together in a deeper way. You're going to hear raw, honest conversations with people walking this path in real time. Stories of growth, healing, purpose, and becoming whole. You'll also hear from me as I reflect on these themes that rise from the stories, answer your questions, and offer small, meaningful takeaways that you can carry back into your week. This is not just a podcast you listen to. It's a place you belong, where you are part of the conversation. Welcome back, everybody. Today is the conclusion of my story. If you have been listening in over the past few weeks, then you have got to hear it from the beginning, and now you will be here through the end. Last week, I had my husband, Sean, come on and join me. I really wanted him to be a part of the conclusion of it because he really kind of helps bring it all together for me, and you can really hear the dynamic of it all with the two of us. And I'm very excited. I hope that you enjoy it. I hope that you have learned something. I hope that you have had any kind of inspiration or maybe found some hope that no matter what you've been through, that somehow you can come out on the other side of it. Last week we kind of had a part one, and this is part two of that. So you're going to step right into the middle of our conversation. But yeah. I'm excited, and I'm really glad that you all listened in, that you joined me, and you helped let me be vulnerable and let me be a part of this with you guys and let me express it. So pull up a seat, grab something to drink. I'll see you inside. So yeah, it was a tough time. I think for me, I gave you such a hard time because I was so angry about it. And I wasn't angry with you. I was angry with God and like, why? Why would you? Why? I personally feel like I've been through a lot. And so like, why would there be more that I needed to go through? But that is not life, right?
Yeah.
You don't, just because you've been through things doesn't mean there's not more to go through. There's not more to deal with. And, at the time it was very hard for me to accept, even though I knew in my spirit that it was the truth. And I'm sorry, we've talked about it, given you such a hard time about it, but it was something I had to walk through too. And I think that we had to walk through together. It brought
Absolutely.
us together. It brought us closer together. And, and we got there and we started moving on. You were in the process of changing jobs again. You'd had even a better opportunity come available.
Mhm.
And you were very excited about it. You were just finishing coming off the end of writing a book with a bunch of, people that you collaborated with.
Yep.
And you had went to New York for the opening and the release of this book. You were very excited about. You had come home. Anna was actually visiting for Mother's Day weekend. We're preparing for Andrew to be here soon, but all of this was just in the first couple month and a half.
Mm.
And you would come back and you brought COVID home. And man,
Went to New York for the first time, got featured on the side of the New York Stock Exchange for the release of our book in our community. And then literally the next day, because it was like a one-day event thing, I come home and then I bring the thing we had dodged successfully
this whole time.
I
And
was so mad.
we had been very grateful and very blessed that we had not had COVID. None of us had. And then you came home, you gave it to me and you gave it to Anna and you had it. So I'm like, oh, great. Now all three of us quarantined during COVID together. And now none of us had gotten it. And now we all have it together. So it was just, what was crazy is that because we had moved into this place, we did not bring hardly, we had all of this stuff, but we didn't have any furniture or anything to put it on. No. Right. So we
had to sell all the furniture to fit everything in the
so
truck.
We had got a little storage unit where we put some things. And then I remember you're sick with COVID and I hadn't gotten sick yet. So I was like, okay, I'm quarantining you in the bedroom, but there's nowhere to lay.
No,
because there's no couch and everything in Florida is tile. There's no comfortable anything. So I remember like we had bought the couch we're actually sitting on now, and it had finally come like 2 days later,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to put it together because it's like a
It just comes in a bunch of
it's
boxes. It's
modular.
modular.
So I'm trying to put together. I can't. I'm like, get up. Like he's sicker than a dog. He's got like 103 fever, and I'm like, you have to help me put this couch together because I have nowhere else to lay. And it was a mess, right? You went back,
What
lay
a
down. I got sick.
what a roller coaster.
It was wild, right? So we even after all of this, the first couple of months there, we were really going through it even with ourselves during that time. And then
Mhm.
eventually we got better, right? COVID didn't last forever. And then Andrew came.
Yep.
And once Andrew came, it was honestly, I was so happy. And I know you were too. We enjoyed him so much being with us. I was like, out of all of the kids, like we would just love for him to just be with us all the time. Um, Especially during that time, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Well, I think for me, there's something really special about when you can create a space for your children to heal from something, right? I would say if I look at the theme of our lives, like creating space is a big part of that and all the
mhm.
things that we do. And when Andrew came, we were excited for him to be there, but I don't think we were prepared for what he was bringing with him,
No, we
right?
were
The
not because
trauma
we
and
didn't
the
know. We didn't understand at the time. Not
and
yet.
and being able to make the space for him to feel all the feels. And Andrew has lots of feels, which it's one of my favorite things about him, right? Is that like he is very transparent about how you feel. You
Mhm.
never
Never
question
question Andrew
where
and
you
his
stand with
feelings.
Andrew, and I love that as a Gemini. That really like that's great for me. And watching him be able to decompress from what he had lived through his whole life and these struggles and stuff that he had, and he could be who he really was unabashedly when he was not having good days and when he was having good days, just watching him be able to come out from under that, and then that leading to him finding a passion and really diving into that passion. And I think
Mhm.
that was a gift that God had given him to, he's so talented with a lot. Every child we have is ridiculously talented. It makes
There.
me feel like I'm like, what did I do with my life? Right. Um, and to watch him make music and how he got his emotions out. Like, one, he's a great lyricist, but two, there's something about the gifting he has that he can take what he feels inside and put it into words that any human being, no matter the life that you've lived, you relate
Yeah.
to that moment at some moment in your life of what he's feeling in that time. And it just grounds you into being like, yeah, like you're always asking yourself why. I remember when his first song came out, he wrote his first song and he's like, I'm standing out on the pier and he wants me to listen to it. And he's like, is it any good? And I'm folding in on
Yeah.
myself at how incredible and how deep it is. And I'm thinking, this is the beginning of you working in a gifting that is so great it's undeniable, right? It's not about just being good at creating music or producing music, but it's like if you connect to this, right? The way that if you connect to anything in your life, the way you connect to this,
Mm.
like the success you're going to find and the fulfillment that you will find from the things that you do will be so far beyond anything you could ever imagine, right? Like it was crazy to watch him finally operate in something that he connected with truly.
It it was when Andrew came, we knew he had talked some about there being struggles at home, that he was struggling with his father, and it we did not know the depth of what that looked like until he
Mm,
came home and he
yeah.
stayed with us. And then slowly as he starts to open up and release some of those things to us, like it for me as a mom, it broke my heart. I know that in the past, y'all have heard my story, like that I've had such deep-seated regret around the things that have happened with my children and around, what happened with Andrew and how like he ended up with his father and not with me. And then all of the ins and outs of what that has looked like over the years, and then trying to get him to come and stay with us, trying to convince him like that this is where it would be better, and him choosing to stay where he was. And now that he's here living with us at this point, him explaining why he did all of these things, right? And
Mhm.
some of it was because he was trying to make his dad okay. He was like, there's one thing about it is when your son looks at you and he's like, because I knew that you were going to be okay without me, but I knew my dad wasn't. And that
Mhm.
was hard. And that he stayed there in spite of how his dad was treating him and how the things were happening for him at that time until Andrew had dove into his education since he was like in 5th grade. Like just what we now know was his escape,
No.
right? He's like, I escaped into my education, I escaped into my knowledge and my learning and into math and science and the stars. Like Andrew wanted to be a physicist, an astrophysicist. Like it was his dream. Like the stars and the sky is his everything. And he's so smart, he's so intelligent, and he's so passionate about it, and he's
Mhm.
extremely knowledgeable about it. um so when he walked away from that, it
That was crazy.
it triggered like, okay, something egregious is happened with him, and him coming and learning that it's the pressure, right? And that's what he talks about a lot. It's the pressure on him um
Mhm.
to perform in a way that somebody else wants you to perform. Like Andrew has done everything right. Like if you look at a kid, you're just like, "Oh, he's like the perfect child. He goes to school, he studies, he didn't focus too much on friends. He didn't even have a girlfriend until he was like 18 years old." So, like it was all of these things. He's like, "Go to school, go to college, work hard." It's all he did. And then on top of it, when he went to school, he finally got into college. He was traveling, commuting 2 hours one way and 2 hours back, and that's 4 hours of your day.
Yep, just
That's
in the
without
car.
traffic, right? And then he's working a full-time job on a full-time physics degree, like, where he's majoring in physics. Like, it's impossible. And they told him that even when he went to school, like, this is impossible. He was supposed to be living on campus, and then, the rearranging of things so, they didn't have to pay for certain things. It became too much for him.
Yeah.
And it did not set him up for success. He truly was set up for failure. And when he did, he fell apart. And so when he came to us, that's how we got him. We found him in this space and him trying to recoup and not feeling all of this guilt and regret on himself for his decisions that he had made over the past few years. And I'm like, and he's still a kid,
Oh, yes, very
right?
much
You're
so.
still a baby. He's 20 years old at this
Yeah,
point. And
just getting
I'm
started.
like, yeah, you're just getting started. There's so much pressure on you. And like you said, giving him that space to heal, to reconcile with himself, to express himself, because he wasn't living in a place where that was allowed to happen before.
Yeah.
And Andrew has always been, since he was very little, I mean, toddler, was always writing songs. He used to write songs for me all the
Mhm.
time and he used
Sing
to
in the shower.
sing in the shower. He was always that way. And he always was very gifted musically, right? And, my brother had bought him a guitar when he was like 15, and Andrew taught himself how to play. He's a phenomenal
Yeah,
guitarist,
it's crazy.
and he sings and he writes and
Plays
he
the
plays
piano.
the piano. And when he had chose to go to school for physics, it was one of the things that I was worried about, because I had talked to him and I said, like, I don't want you to lose this part of yourself. I don't want you to lose that music part of yourself. Of course, I come from a family of musicians. We're all musicians. You're a musician. So it's not a part of him I want him to lose,
Mhm.
because it is the part that really he connects with himself with. And when you're in dealing with science and physics and stuff, it's very consuming
Mhm.
and doesn't leave a lot of room for stuff. So I really wanted to make sure he didn't lose that. And I know that he did get away from that a lot when he was in school. So when he came back, like, we really encouraged him to lean into it. Like, lean into this. Give yourself the time and space. There's no need for you to go anywhere. There's no need for you to do
Mhm.
anything. Just be right now. And uh and he tinkered a little bit. He wasn't really that much into it, but your birthday had come around,
Oh my god.
right? So it
Yes.
was your 40th birthday. And I was like, hey, Andrew and I used to go to the grocery store around 4 o'clock every day. Um, to get food for the night when we were in Tampa,
As one
because
in Florida
as
does.
one in Florida does, right? Because you don't have a lot of space, so you go every day to get your food, and lifestyle is very differently there.
Mhm.
And I'm leaning in and trying to learn the ways. And so Andrew and I would go in, and we were talking in the car, and I said, hey, what if we did, like, we wrote a little song or like a little rap for, Sean for his birthday? And Andrew was uninterested. He was like, no. And I'm like, come on, it'll be really fun. And so I start
Mhm.
throwing some things out there, and I mean, he was appalled at me. Andrew was like, wow, that's awful. And I'm like, oh, if you can do better. And he's like, I can do better. And then I'm like, then do it. And he's like, no. So I'm like, you're no fun. So we get in, we unload the groceries, whatever, and he goes to his room. And later that night, Andrew comes out and he's like, hey, come here, I need you to hear this. So I go in his room, and he has written an entire rap for your birthday. And I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. And I'm like, you didn't even use any of my lines. And he was like, no. And I'm like, you have to use at least one of my lines, because then we didn't do it. And he was like, okay. So he like finagles my line in there, which to this day he hates.
He used you as like the
I was his
physical
catalyst.
act. You were the physical actor of his music. Because you were the one that was like all into the dancing and doing stuff or whatever. Whenever y'all actually did it, he just kind of was like, I'm just going to put this on.
Well, what's funny, because it was the day before your birthday. Like, it was quick. It was like a fast thing. So what was funny is Andrew's like, okay, look, here's the lyrics. He taught it to me. It was short, it was small or whatever. And then I was like, okay, well, we're going to like dress up and we're going to go out there and we're going to perform it for your birthday, which we did. Was hilarious. It went off very well. Sean loved it.
Awesome.
Greatest birthday present ever.
It was the greatest present ever.
And then Andrew's like, okay, wait, I got another gift. And we're like, okay. And then he brings it out and he plugs it up and he plays it. And much to my dismay, he has taken this, written way more lyrics to this song, and he has recorded it and produced it in his bedroom overnight.
That's crazy.
And then he presents it to you for his birthday, which makes, I mean, it was really awesome. But then I was like, wow, it just.
Well, he lets you have your thing. He just
kind of was like, okay, mom had this cool idea, but it was whatever. But it was great. And it was really awesome, because from that point forward, Andrew was writing music like that. It was every day he was turning over something new.
Yeah, I was honored to be the first real song.
Right? Yeah, right. It was wild. It was such a cool thing. And, and now Andrew writes Sean birthday songs every year.
That's what I look forward to, or whatever.
It's super cool. I'm not going to lie.
And they just keep getting better.
They do.
He's got that one from that one year, right? That's just like, it's always been the peak for us, is like, how are you ever going to top this? He does great music or whatever, but I don't know. It's the hook with that one.
It is. So Andrew really was starting to lean into his music during that time and expressing how he was feeling. So that whole like his first like EP during that year was really just him expressing and going through the emotions and healing from all the stuff that he had been dealing with.
It was powerful.
And to me, it's his best work, right? He was like, oh, mom, that's so old news. It's so bad, right? Because, now Andrew, he, from our house, he went into college. He went to Full Sail University. Now he is a full-blown recording like producer and master. Like, he does all the things, and and now he's trained and knows exactly what he's doing, and his work is phenomenal, right? I mean, he is my producer of my podcast. He does phenomenal work. So it's to watch him having grown from that to this in this space. He's taken such a huge turn from physics, even though it still holds that special place in his heart. But this whole time during them was just a special and wonderful time to have with him. And it was something I thank God for every single day, is that out of all of the things that have happened, out of all the time that I lost, out of all the time that I've given up, that I had gotten that such special time with him. And in a time where he truly needed me, and I was in a place where I truly could be there for him, and to have you there for him as well was like having a father figure that showed him something different than what he has always known, and what could be possible, the connection, the love, the sharing. It was something that you can't
Like, it was
you can't make it up. You can't forge that any other way
Yeah,
than
I
the
think it
way
was
we did
pretty
it.
pivotal moment for me and him and our relationship because I'd always struggled. Like each of my children is a different scenario, right? Like Austin was my first, like always my first. Um, and then Anna was like from another family, so different type of adoption, right? And then Andrew was the one that I didn't
Mm.
adopt, right? And struggling to understand the dynamics. If you've ever adopted children or you've never had your own children, like every one of my children is a different scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So, not having that experience was never taught growing up. Like, you're always like, oh, you find a woman, you get married, you have kids, you build a life,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, I found a woman, there were already a bunch of kids, and I was going to have different relationships, and then more kids were going to come, and I was going to have entirely different relationships with them. It was very difficult for me to navigate because I didn't know how to treat each child differently, but the love that I had was the same for all of them, but I wanted unique connections
Mm-hmm.
with each of them so that they knew that the relationship that I had with them was special and different, right? Because kids are always trying to compete,
Oh
right?
yeah,
And they're
they are.
always they're always going to find like, oh, I'm the
Oh, Austin and
favorite, or
Andrew is like, I'm the favorite. No, I'm the
and
favorite.
it was kind of like I never saw my relationships that way. It was like I had different relationships with each of my children that were based on different aspects of my life or different parts of myself
Yeah.
that they all got, and the relationships were very different and unique. I had conversations with one that I didn't have with the other, right? Like I had experiences with one where it's like you could just be in the presence, right? And with Andrew, it was always difficult because it was frustrating to be a parent of a child that you love so much, but be entirely powerless for, right? I had no legal obligations. I had no legal liabilities or anything. Like, I can't make him do something. I can't teach him. Like, he could just be looking at me. He's like, "You're not my dad," and then just go
Yeah.
about his life or whatever. And that's like the biggest fear of somebody who's trying to be a father figure, because it's like you want to impose these ideals and these beliefs so that they consider them, right? I don't want you to adopt my stuff just because you do, but I want to give you exposure to it. Maybe impose is not the right word, but I want to give you exposure to it so that you consider that and all the other things that you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to be additive to your life. I
Yeah.
want to know that because I was there, your life was better because I was there, or else why am I having a relationship regardless, right? And with Andrew, it was always very challenging because I didn't want to step on another man's feet, right? I didn't want to, I never want to replace another person. It's like with Anna, right? We're like, hey, even if you
Yeah.
come over here, it's like, I still want you to have this relationship if you can have this
Right.
relationship,
Yeah.
because it's important to me, right? It's not a competition.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of like, what am I adding to your life? And with him, it was very difficult to do because one, we never got enough time that I could connect. I'm not a person that like, I come in, I
Yeah.
meet something. I'm not about shallow connection. I want the deep connection, but it has to come over a long period of time of those shared memories together. And that was really hard for him. And then two was that misnomer as a father who's only ever adopted, that like that relationship can't be as strong because you've not made this legal step to something, right? And it took a long time to really understand that. So we had a conversation in the car one day, and I was like, "Look, man, I'm just going to pour this out for you because I don't know how else to
Yeah.
say this." It's kind of like, I love you like I've already adopted you, like you're my child, always have. I don't want to replace your father or whatever, but I want to be a father to you, and I don't know how in the role that I have, right? And we talked about that, and he shared his philosophy of
Mm-hmm.
what it's like to have a relationship with somebody else, and I'm like, I'm shocked because it's the exact same philosophy that I have about something. It's like, I don't care about your relationship. I don't care if you're blood or not or whatever. It's about how you treat me. It's about who you are and your presence in my life that makes the difference. Otherwise, the titles don't matter, the legality doesn't
Right.
matter, or
And
whatever
it's,
else.
I mean, that's the truth.
And I'm like, I'm happier than a lark because at the end of the day, I'm like, now I can be that way because this is what I value too. Like, we found that common ground with it, and everything changed. It felt like almost overnight. Like, he really leaned into that. I leaned into that. And we found this new, deeper relationship that I think both of us had wanted for a very long time, but didn't know how to navigate. And it was so pivotal. It was like a massive moment, just like what happened with Ginger, right? You were right. I didn't expect it either.
Hmm.
I thought, okay, well, I didn't really want to have an animal, the responsibility for the longest time. She just always really liked me, always wanted to be near me. And I was kind of like, okay, I have to love this thing because it loves me or whatever. But like, I had trauma around animals. I'd not had good experiences and lost animals. And I didn't want to lose any more things. And when I lost her, it devastated me in a way that I was not prepared for at the time. And it changed everything about like, I will no longer go through this life ever refusing to love something with everything I have. And that's what prompted that conversation with
Hmm.
Andrew. It's what prompted having a different relationship. And I look back now after our life together and I look at the relationship I have with my children, and while it's still far from what I want, right? Like I'm still working toward that. It's more fulfilling than it's ever been, all because of these little small moments of things we went through that had nothing to do with it. And when I look at, all of the things God has moved us and all of the stories and these little pieces that you're sharing with your
Hmm.
audience of stuff, I think at the time, the purpose of why I was doing these things had nothing to do with what was being fulfilled, right? It was about the obedience through those moments, not the doubt or acceptance of whatever was happening. But
Hmm.
through that obedience, he opened doors to things that I would have never been able to encounter or have the experience of had it not happened. Right. Ginger's death was one of the best and worst things that ever happened to me. And that took a long time to really
Yeah.
land. Right. And I think about that with Andrew too. It's like, yeah, you didn't get him for a long time, but when you did, what he brought, how he changed our lives, and the part that we got to experience of his life, that small part
Yeah.
of the life that it was so more impactful than just having your children around. Because a lot of
Yeah.
times that's relegated to the not having memories. Like families are always going out and doing things with their kids so they have memories, but nobody's thinking about the just random moments where they're sitting on the couch doing nothing unless something profound happens. But with him, it was like every moment was something profound that was happening. He was making up all of that time. And I think,
Yeah.
what a
It
wonderful gift.
it was. I think that for me, just listening to you talk about the kids, it is like it brings me to tears because I've lived such a life with them before you. And then talking about you wanting to be so additive to somebody's life that you will never know and understand what you have brought to our lives and that you have brought to our children. You have given them something that they have longed for their whole life. Even with the ones who have had their own families, their own fathers in their lives, you have been able to bring in a different kind of fatherhood to them. And for those who didn't have fathers at all, you have been able to be that for them, that stability, that rock, that constant care and connection for them. And even though you struggled to find your space in that, you truly do walk in that so well. You know, I get a little jealous sometimes because I'm like, you walked in and my kids are like, "Oh, mom's out, dad's in." And but I get it because you truly are such an incredible human being, and I don't know out of all the things in my life that I've endured why I deserved you, but we are so grateful that you are in our lives and that we get to experience life with you. And you have healed something that has been so broken and so disrupted in our lives that there's no way to ever thank you or to thank God enough for bringing us together and bringing our family together. I Andrew, during this time, he finally moves on, right? He moved out, and that was hard in itself, but
Mm-hmm.
Austin got married. And now we keep moving on into all these parts, and we find ourselves to where we are now. We got Anna is married, Austin's married, Andrew is now engaged, and looking at them thinking,
Whew.
wow, wow, like we went from, you know, 2 to 3 to 6 of them, and they're just really beautiful humans, and they're doing such beautiful things in the world, and I don't think we could have done a better job. And sometimes I shake my head going, "How did that happen?
Mm,
How did that happen?" And, that truly is the grace and the mercy of God.
that is the answer.
And, I could not have walked through any of this with anybody else other than you. So, thanks.
Mm,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. I feel
Um,
the same way, though. I think all of you have restored many things in my life that have been lost that I was hopeless to ever get back. And though it didn't look like the traditional story I'd been taught growing up, I think that it's pretty awesome that the experience I had was better than any story I'd had ever been taught. Had I wanted to live the life of the story I'd been taught, I think I'd have been underwhelmed with life. And God has never been one to underwhelm me in any experience I've had in my life. So I'm very grateful for that. Each of my children have brought something out of me that was not something I never shared with another human being. And then you have brought many things out of me, not only to help me make me grow, but like you create an environment in which when someone can be themselves, the things that they need to be just happen. Right. And I think that's probably one of the most beautiful things I've experienced being in this family was we never had to do anything, right? It wasn't like
mhm.
work to have
Yeah.
to do any of these things or to cohabitate or to like pull these things out. I've always loved how everything just felt so natural. It felt like it's always been that way. And all of my kids, even in regards to how they are, everywhere we go, they think that most everybody thinks that my children are my children, that they
Yeah.
look like me, they
Yeah.
act like me. Like I think people have a harder time believing they're your children than they do mine, especially after that one Christmas photo.
Oh.
But, yeah, I think the feeling is very mutual, is that the restoration I've had in my life, I think parallels a lot of the hope that everyone else has had, and I think that's the beauty is God knows that we all need something different, so he brings each of us into each other's lives to provide those unique things.
Yeah. Yeah. 1,000%.
No, I may be getting you off topic, I tend to do that
No.
sometimes, but
No. No, I don't think so at all. I think it was just we were really experiencing a lot of this during this time, having different moments with each of our children because they're
mhm,
growing, they're changing. If people have listened to Anna's story, she was going through a lot during that time and
mhm,
coming to her own like end of herself. Andrew is doing the same thing. They all were doing these different things, and you and I were the same. We being in Florida, we did have a lot of time even with ourselves, though Andrew was there, right? Like our life changed dramatically when we moved out of Georgia,
yeah,
and our relationship shifted a lot. You things changed. There were a lot of wonderful things that happened, but there were a lot of really hard things that started happening because you had
yes,
changed jobs. And though this job was really exciting, we're making more money. You're working from home. We're doing it's in on paper, it looks amazing.
mhm,
And but during this time, you were, like, silently struggling,
yeah,
and you're living in a world that I don't understand, and I don't understand what's going on with you, and you started seeking out different things to try to help. Remember, you went and joined the Brazilian jiu-jitsu,
mhm,
like, I don't know what it was. It was something you were doing for the veterans, right? 'Cause,
yeah,
it was like a see if this would help therapy-wise,
PTSD
PTSD
stuff,
and
yeah.
things like that, and you started struggling more and more, and I remember I could tell because you were smoking, right? And you were smoking incessantly. You got to the point where
Yes.
you started working outside just so you could smoke all the time, and you started losing a lot of weight, and
Mhm.
and you were just increasingly getting more and more stressed, right? And
Yes.
as the next year came around, it was like 2023, like it was just you were working all the time. It was
Mhm.
constant. I was working on my stuff. I was working on creating a ton of stuff. I was writing all the time. I was coaching during this time. And so we were just doing a lot of different stuff. I remember when we finally had some friends of ours, there's artists, there were some good friends of ours, and they had recently moved also to
Mhm.
Florida
From
and
Georgia.
from Georgia,
Mhm.
and they had invited us to come visit them, and they were actually in Sarasota, which was probably about an hour from us. It wasn't too far,
Yeah.
and we went and visited them, and we started hanging out a lot there, and you were starting to do a little bit of work with them, and it was really exciting you too, like being able to be a part of something creative and not just so the doldrums of your day at the corporate job you were at, and they were kind of like pushing us and insisting like, "Hey, y'all need to move so we're closer. We need to move so you're closer." And Andrew was fixing to move out, right? Because now he's
Mhm.
starting college, and so he had decided to go to Full Sail, and so we're getting him ready to move into there, and it was crazy, Karen, because we're like, "Okay, we'll do it," right? We had looked
Mhm.
at maybe buying a home instead of renting in Florida,
Yeah.
and that turned into a crazy situation,
It
um,
did. It did. That
and
was wild.
we ended up not purchasing that house, thank God,
Mhm.
and then we're like, "Okay, well, maybe we could move. Maybe we could move to Sarasota and be closer." And life is a little more laid back. I mean, everything's laid back in Florida, but in Sarasota, it's way more laid back than it is in Tampa, right? It's less city scene,
Mhm.
and so we're like, "Yeah, let's do it." So we decided, we found a place there we were gonna move into. It's so crazy because as soon as we decided to move out of there, we're on our own again, here comes Anna,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? And
So it's
Anna
like every house we get a new child back.
right, one leaves, one comes in, something happens, like, the kids that's the nature of the life that they were in,
Mhm.
and so Anna
But they're out
was
there trying,
they're
right?
yeah, they're
So, I
doing
mean,
their
that's the
best,
important part is we do
and
what we can to help them, but they gotta get out and try to at least help
mhm.
themselves.
So her and her boyfriend at the time had come and stayed with us, and boy, was that challenging, because he was a struggle, right? That this had been a person that she had been in a relationship in and out of a relationship with that we did not condone, we were not happy about, but, she's making her choices, so we're trying to support her the best we can and giving her the best advice that we can while still supporting the decisions she's making.
Mhm.
They're trying to figure it out and do things on their own. They had been in Georgia, they had moved to Florida, then they lost their place there, so now they're back with us, and I'm like, "Okay." So we're moving again, and we're in a new home with a new kid and her boyfriend, and it was just like, whatever. Now, right on the heels of this, it's like watching to me, it's like watching a train wreck that has not happened yet. It's like watching like,
Yeah.
it's coming, but you don't know when, and you don't know how bad it's gonna be. But with you, it was really I could tell because there's a specific way that you start behaving when you start getting really, really stressed,
Mhm.
and I could see it building up. And you were doing some work with our friends. I started working with them and doing some things,
Mhm.
and that was fun, and we were having a lot of, good times with that, but, like, you're still, like, having all these issues, and I still really don't understand what's going on because, you know, you don't talk about certain things, right? You don't like to share a lot of stuff, especially
Yeah.
during that time, and you really were what I call struggling with your leadership in your job. And, you have your personal, like you have a lot of morals and ethics, and you have a vision on who you are and who you want to be and the work that you do, no matter what you're doing and where you're at. And things were just not jiving for you in that way there. And so you started pushing back a lot at work. And
Yeah.
when that happened, it didn't go well. It didn't
Yeah.
go well. And you ended up losing your job, and it was just like, I don't know. I mean, you'd lost a job before, but this was huge. It was a huge hit.
Yeah.
We've moved and we're in this home, and it was not cheap in Sarasota to
Mhm.
live. We
It was
have
not.
people living with us, and we're trying to figure out, okay, like, what are we going to do? And you're just like, well, I'm going to find another job. And I remember you had started looking, and then nothing was working, nothing was happening, nothing was happening. But you were it was weird because you were so much better once you had gotten fired. Like, I did not realize
Yeah.
that a lot of the stress that I was seeing come from you was because of your job. And I'd like you to talk just a little bit about that, because I can't do it justice like you can.
Okay. Um, to go forward, I think I got to go back a little bit because as I'm listening to you tell this story, I'm like, oh, well, we're both living our own separate lives while we're living a life together. And
Yeah.
I was struggling with a lot. So we got to Florida, and as you said, the lifestyle was very different,
Mhm.
right? And it forces you out into a lot of things. And I started finding that, like, from a work perspective, I was excited because I was moving into a new opportunity. I was working with somebody I had met and known from my previous job that had invited me over to this job or whatever because we got along really well. We saw eye to eye on how to execute things, right? And we're very much like just get it done kind of people. But he gave me the space to allow me to be the humanitarian
Yeah.
in the approach that I have for leadership. But when we first got to Florida, I started experiencing anxiety because you changed in wanting to go out more and to do things because that's the lifestyle there. Like, people
Mm-hmm.
don't sit in their home. You're not a hermit in Florida unless you're already post retired and that's what you've always been your entire life. Otherwise, you're going out places. You want to go to the bars, or you go out on the water, or you go out and do things because you can't live in Florida and there not be a million things to do,
Yeah.
right? It's
That's, and we had
and
lived
you
that
don't even
life
got to go far.
before.
Yeah, you don't even have to go very far. And in Georgia, we just lived in our house. We never went and did anything. We never went out anywhere. And this started to well up an anxiety I had from, like, you can relate it to PTSD or whatever. Like, I'll be the stubborn Marine here, former Marine, where I had always avoided going out into public places and places like that, especially places that had alcohol. I had this, I won't say it's an irrational fear, but I had a founded fear that, given some of the experience that I had and things I did in my military service, that I was always afraid that if we got into a situation where you're just around a bunch of drunk people or whatever, and somebody was to do something to disrespect you or hurt you or whatever else, like, I didn't want to be liable for what might happen or my behavior of that because I had certain training and it's just responsive. It's always a fear that I had, right? Like, you don't know what you're capable of. And then when you know what you're capable of, you live in fear of, like, not being able to always control that because
Right.
it's a response. It's not a thought that
Mm-hmm.
you're making a deliberate action to. And I was like, I'll just avoid this entirely. And it hurt our relationship a lot, most of our lives, because we couldn't go out and do anything. But everything in our life was perpetuating toward going out more
Now,
and
mind you,
being.
we're not living in bars. Like,
No,
we didn't
no,
go to
not at
bars,
all.
but in
It's just we're
Florida,
going out and doing,
everything you do is
and
a
it's
bar.
around tons of
Like,
people and everyone's drinking everywhere you
all the
go.
time.
Like, just people walking down the street are having a drink. You either exercise a lot or you're drinking a lot or
Yeah.
whatever, because that's the relaxed lifestyle that Florida is. I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing. It's not good for alcoholics, but we didn't have that problem. But I was still just worried about being in a situation, and I had trauma from past relationships where
Yeah.
like, just wanted to avoid it altogether. And, I had started experiencing this so much that is like, I didn't want it to be a hindrance anymore. I started seeking help. And in that help, I had found this USF study that was going on that helped veterans with PTSD by doing either yoga or BJJ. And when you
Mm-hmm.
apply for it, it was like you didn't get to pick. You could tell them you had a preference for something, but they just put you in whatever because it was a
Right.
double blind
Yeah.
study. But you had to go and talk to somebody about the experiences you had and why, because what they're trying to do is help alleviate people that have PTSD to show this may be a valid way to be able to help you work through some of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and did the interview, and they were like, yeah, you're a really great candidate for this stuff. What do you want to do? And I was like, well, I'd prefer to do the BJJ. And they're like, oh, that program's already full. We're going to put you in yoga to start out with. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, it is what it is. And I'm here in the study. You do it for 8 weeks. They test some stuff, and then, you're supposed to be done. So I started with the yoga stuff, and then like right afterwards, they offered the
Mhm.
BJJ as well. And they're like, would you be interested in doing both? No, I think it was the other way around. I did BJJ, and then they offered the yoga to do both. Either way, it was like immediately after I started,
You did both.
they're wanting me to do both or whatever. And I'm like, I'm that off the charts apparently. So I started doing it, and I really, really enjoyed it. One, because yoga stretches you out before you get into rolling with BJJ, and it gets you a little more limber. Two, it helps you kind of center yourself and let go of everything instead of just
Yeah.
hopping right into fight mode. And I found through doing that, like it helped a lot. And it was helping with a lot of that anxiety. I still had problems with like when we got to the part where we had to practice hand-to-hand combat, where we were working with weapons or whatever, that I had some just really bad flashbacks. I was having bad nightmares and dreams about stuff that in my past. And I was like, this is, I think, where all of this resides,
Yeah.
and kind of working through all of that. And I suffered through it. I struggled through it or whatever else, but I made it through. But it kind of was like, okay, I'm done. Like, I think I'm done with this part of it or whatever. Um, I'm more comfortable with being able to be in public with you in scenarios, and like they teach you the discipline of that. It's like now you're
Mhm.
moving me out of my head and it being into reactions to being like, okay, I can recognize the thing that's going to happen before it's not just going to happen to me and I'm going to respond and things are going to be bad. So it gave me a little more confidence that like, hey, I know that I can handle this, but now I've been trained in other techniques that are less deadly, and I know what to look for before those things happen, because civilian training very different than military training.
Right.
So that helped alleviate a lot of that. And then I started turning and looking inward to other things around that, like how my work is going. And I noticed I was always very stressed. So I looked at my smoking, and I got the little app for my watch, and I was
I
watching my heart
remember.
rates. And like, my God, I got to the point where I was just chain smoking all day long to be able to get through stuff, because there were just, with business, there are certain challenges with leadership to where,
Mhm.
you're trying to help develop people that not everybody is always willing to invest in,
Right.
right? And there's political capital that you need to gain in order to take the chance to invest in other people. And I wanted to invest in more people than I had political capital for. Um, I think the more we went out with our friends, especially when we finally went to like the big thing in Miami, uh, I let go. I started being honest and opening up about what was happening
Yeah.
in the inside and where I was struggling with it. And there was a lot of challenges with like not wanting to be alive anymore, not wanting to, deal with a lot of the things that's going on, because I'm like, I just want to help people. And it feels like every situation I'm in and everything that I do, there are lots of people who want help, but other people who are in the position to help but don't want to, and just like treat it written off because it's already been a problem. So they don't want to
Yeah.
deal with the problem anymore.
So I remember when we were in Miami, it was one of the nights we were there and we were in bed at night and you had started opening up and talking to me about it. And when, I'll definitely have Andrew put up a trigger warning for sure for people who are experiencing those kinds of feelings and emotions, that it's not easy to express when you are feeling in a place where you'd be more willing to take your life than to continue to live the life that you have.
Mhm.
And I had no idea that you were feeling that, and it scared me because as close as we are and as much as I knew you, like, I didn't know these things,
Mhm.
and that it scared me that you were able to conceal that from me and I not know it. And then, it's a terrifying feeling because you don't know what can happen.
Mhm.
And so many people just
Mhm.
end up pulling the trigger. And it was completely, it took me aback, and I was like, whatever we have to do,
Mhm.
whatever it is, whatever we have to do. And, and you were like, okay, but still it was kind of like, okay, well, I opened up and I shared it, but you really weren't willing to do
Well, this is the life
any
that
of
you're
that.
already living. Unwinding from that is very difficult because it's very spaghetti. right? It wasn't just that. That was tied into trauma from the military, things that I had been denying for years and years and years about having to carry because of the trauma of being a child and being raised, where it's like most men are, it's like you hold this inside. And I'm not an impulsive person in the, like one day I'm just going to, I'll be gone kind of thing or whatever. So I felt like I had this under control. It's just I'm dealing with this feeling more and more frequently to the point where like this is a primary theme in my life now, to where I can't have valuable relationships with other people. And you got 30 something people at work that depend on you to be there for them, to support them, to literally position them to be their best. And by the end of the day, there's nothing left of you because you're constantly defending their right to
Right.
find their best with people who aren't invested in them the
Mm-hmm.
way that you are. And after so many days, the well runs dry,
Yeah.
and you're kind of like, I don't know what to do. I'm just broken at this point, and I'm just crying out for somebody to give me a method of how I'm supposed to fill this well to make it to the next day, kind of thing. Because I care and I love so much, I can't stop this, but I recognize that it's not sustainable. So you're
Yeah.
stuck in this loop and you don't know what to do. So asking for help is a
Yeah.
good step, but it doesn't solve or alleviate the problem,
It
right?
doesn't. And I remember after we got back from Miami, because now that you've shared and we started talking about it more, you're like, I'm praying, I've been asking God, like, please help me do whatever it takes to help me to not feel this way, to help me into a different space. And like you crying out to God for those things. And when the phone call came and that day happened and you were let go, it took us, I mean, I don't know how long it took us for us to
Mhm.
really be like, "Oh," right? I think it was even after we got here, after we moved back to Texas, where you look back and you really saw 'em like, "Oh, all of these things that have happened that feel so terrible." We look back and we're like, "Oh, that was God answering your prayer."
Yeah.
Right?
That
It
was how
just
extreme it had to be
it
because of how deep that it was. But
right.
those small nudges and those small shifts made, my God, all the difference and everything. Like, because when you're there, you don't feel like I can come out from under this anymore. I mean, it took, I mean, we're 2.5 years in to that. And I've had other work that's kept us going, and I've had some very interesting jobs or whatever to get there or whatever. And I'm super appreciative because some of them have been ultimately very fulfilling
Mhm.
despite low paying.
Right? That's the thing.
But I see how those small nudges helped me alleviate some of those things, right? Because sometimes we feel the way that we do, and we feel like we're so stuck with this that we're thinking there has to be a specific way to be able to get there. But with the right knobs
Yeah.
being turned, we find a way out of it in a way we didn't know. I mean, who would have ever thought that being an Uber driver would have been the most satisfying job I had ever had my entire life, that I looked forward to that more than I've ever in anything I've ever done,
Yeah.
and all the accomplishments I have.
Yeah, so
But
that was crazy because when you lost your job, like, all of the stuff with Anna and her boyfriend finally had resolved itself where he had already moved out right after you lost your job. We're scrambling to figure out what to do. You have a severance, so we know we're gonna be
mhm,
carried for a little while, and then just giving you the time to figure out what you wanted to do and where we were gonna go from here, right?
yeah,
And then, that next year comes around, 2024, and we're like, "Okay, we're coming up on the end of this severance, like, what's gonna happen?" Right? And you had started working with our friends a little bit more,
mhm,
but that was temporary,
mhm.
right? And so we're getting to finally to the place where things are getting tight.
Yeah.
Things were getting tight. Things are becoming more stressful in a new, different way. And
Mhm,
we're like, okay, we got to get out of the house we're in. Our lease was coming up. We're like, we cannot renew a lease here. The rent was astronomical.
mhm,
And so we're looking for somewhere else to go that's a lot cheaper. And we have the conversation with Anna like, now is your time. Now
yep.
is your time to fly, little one. Like, you've got to go because you're going to have to start taking care of yourself because we can't do it. Right.
Yeah.
And that really was a catalyst that pushes her into the life that she now has. Like, it's just so wild to look back and see what God was doing through the whole thing, right? At every step of the way. when at the times it didn't feel that way.
Well, I think
And
that theme of obedience keeps coming up over and
yeah,
over and over again, that even when we don't feel excited about, or we don't always want to do the things, because I find most of the time when God is directing us to do things, they're going to be things that we're like, I don't want to do that,
yeah,
right? Very
very
few
much
times
so.
I've ever been told stuff, it's like, yeah, man, let's go, I'm ready, right?
Yeah, well, for us, it was
But
never
that
that way.
continual obedience, you're covered in the grace
Yeah.
of and the mercy of where you're going to be going and what you're going to be doing
Well,
as you're
too,
stepping forward.
in that vein, you feel a different kind of pressure, right?
Mhm.
You feel a different kind of pressure, and it's less pressure to perform, which is really interesting to me because
Yes.
coming from the life where you're making a lot of money, you're working these corporate jobs, you have all this responsibility, you there's a pressure to perform. But once that's removed, the pressure that you feel now is to somehow find a way to alleviate that feeling for the rest of your life. That's how it felt for
Mm.
the both of us. And I'm kicking into high gear going, okay, I have been working on things for years now. I have been
Yep.
putting things together, I have been working on creating this business where I've had this culmination of all of these things. And you're just like, well, when are you gonna?
What you gonna
And I'm
do?
like, what are you gonna do? And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? And during this time, we had finally found another little apartment that we moved into, which we absolutely
Then it
loved.
was great there.
It was great. It's short lived, but it was great. Anna had moved and she had gotten her own place, and she moved halfway across the country to New Mexico. And so here we are again by ourselves. And we're in a whole different space. You had decided to Uber drive. So, yes, you were Uber driving. You were really enjoying it. And it gave me a lot of extra time alone because you worked at night. So,
Mhm.
I took a bunch of psychology classes. I started taking all these courses and, building up even my own repertoire of information and my knowledge on stuff because I had really seen the path on which I wanted to go. I'm like, I've already known it, but I really want to step out into it. And I was building my own course to really help people. So I was like, how do I do this? And I remember I joined, an academy that I worked with, Amy Porterfield. And when I'm doing all of this, it was really weird because I'm taking this to learn how to build my own course.
Mhm.
And through that, she had like this little thing. She's like, oh, well, like if you're going to do this, then you got to have some type of like thing out in the world. Like I don't post on social media. I don't have a newsletter. I don't have a blog. I don't have a podcast. Like I didn't do anything. Like nobody knew who I was.
Yes.
Like I'm nobody. I'm just some chick in a house somewhere. I'm just one in billion the people. And they're like, so, if you have things that you want to put out in the world, people need to know who you are and they need to know what you have. And I'm like, okay. So I had called Andrew. I'd like messaged all the kids and I'm like, okay, so if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to do like a weekly email, do I do a newsletter? Do I start a blog? Do I do a podcast? And all of them were like, hands down, start a podcast, Mom. And I'm like, okay, why? Why would I start a podcast? And they're like, because you're your best when you're speaking. They're like, you are your best when you're having the chats with people, when you're having those conversations. And that's where you connect to people. And
This is
so
what we've always done.
Right. And it is,
right?
it's all I've been spending my whole life doing is having these connections and conversations with people, especially in the past, like at that point, 10 years. So I was like, all right, okay, well, how do I do that? And so Andrew being the audio genius that he is, he's like, okay, well, you just need these couple of things and you're just going to do it. Right. And I'm like, oh, okay. And because my mind at the time was so focused on like, I'm going to just do this little thing over here so people know who I am, so I can put this out. Because my goal was this over here, when I started the podcast, it seemed like a very easy thing to do for me. I didn't have a lot of thoughts wrapped up into it. Like while recording was difficult, once you kind of get into the groove, I got better and easier at that. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just do this and I put it out in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have all these thoughts and feelings about the podcast, right? Because my thoughts and feelings were attached to this thing over here. This is a little side thing that's just kind of attached, right? And lo and behold, I get halfway down the road and I'm like, oh, this is what I'm doing.
Mhm.
The podcast is what I'm doing, and watching how God kind of orchestrates all these little things even to help me get out of my own head. And I didn't realize that until later down the road. And now the podcast is huge. It's grown, and now I'm on video, which is I'm still getting used to. Um, and now having it's changed formats a little bit and having people come on and having conversations and sharing stories, which is something that I'm extremely passionate about, is having people to share their life and share the parts and the pieces of them that we struggle with, that we walk with, that we've come through, that we've overcome, and how important that really is. And so I started that. You're Uber driving,
Mhm.
and we realized very quickly that it's not going to keep us, right?
It's not gonna be enough.
It's not going to be enough. And I remember I had even tried to take a job, and then that was short-lived. I was hostessing at a restaurant, and we're just like, it's not going to be enough. And it was hard because here we are. In my mind, here we are again, right? We're losing our home, right? And we didn't even have the money to lose our home. Like, how is
Mhm.
that possible, right? You've been out of a job for over a year.
Mhm.
We are preparing to have to put everything we own in storage
Mhm.
that we can't afford. And then going and realizing to put that much stuff that we do have in storage is like $500-600 a month. And you're like, well, I don't, okay, so you're going to Uber drive just so we can pay the rent on our storage, right? And then where do we go? Where do we go from here? And we didn't have anywhere to go.
Whew.
And I know a lot of people have heard a lot of this story up to this point, like after this point, because if you've been with me since when I started, this is where we are at, right? We're reaching the part of my story to where I actually started the podcast. So if you hear a lot of it, you're going to hear a lot of that story. And you're trying to find your way. I'm trying to find my way. We move in with Andrew and his fiance, or soon to be fiance. They weren't even engaged at the time.
Mhm.
So we move in with them. And we're living on their living room floor on an air mattress. Now, if you have never lived on an air mattress in the living room floor of your 22-year-old, I suggest you all try it because it's just the most wonderful thing ever.
Mm.
I mean, I'm being facetious if you can't tell. It was a nightmare. And it wasn't that it was bad living with them. I love being with them, of course.
Mhm.
It was that, like, oh my gosh, here I am, right? We're in our 40s. We're living on the floor in the living room of our 23-year-old son. Like, what has our life come to? How did we get here?
Mhm.
Like, how did we go from up here to down here? Like, that is how it felt. It's very much how it felt. And then we had went to Georgia for Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
Now, what a time that was, because my aunt and uncle were coming to visit the family and having like this really mini reunion at Thanksgiving.
8 years?
We hadn't seen them since 2017, and it had been longer for other people, but like
Mm.
all of us being together, it had been 10 years, almost 10 years, 9, 10 years before we had all been together. And my uncle at the time had just gotten out of rehab. He had been dealing with his alcoholism for like 20 plus years. And he was a very functioning alcoholic, right? So, but there were some culmination of things in their life that had just really kind of reached a peak that had sent him. And he was like, yeah, I need to get help. And he went to rehab. He had just recently been out. We come there. We're all visiting. I remember they actually called because we weren't going to even be able to afford to go home. And they called and were like, can we help you get here? Can we pay you gas money to come? Will you come? And we were like, well, of course we'll come. And so we did, and we were so grateful for that. And then we come back, we're preparing, which is so weird because we're packing the house up to move into Andrew's apartment. And
Mhm.
I get a phone call, and it is my uncle and my aunt. And they're like, hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm packing my house up. What are you doing? And they're
Mm.
like, well, where are you going? And I'm like, well,
Well.
um, And so I was kind of explaining the situation because we were not telling everybody at Thanksgiving that we were really in this state. Like they knew we didn't have a lot of money, but we were praying. We were praying so hard that something would happen that we would not have to give up our place, right? And
Yeah,
we ran it right up into the wire,
we
and
did.
we tried, we did our best, and but it just wasn't what was meant to be. But during that time, they were like, well, we've been here talking, and my uncle apparently had been in his office, and it just like, I was sitting there, he was writing and he had been praying. He goes, and I just looked up and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I think Sean and Heather need to be here. I think we need to ask them to come here. Now, this is wild, right? Because they don't really know that we're going
Yeah,
through this. So why in the world would two grown people just want to get up and come and move into your house?
and out of all your family, they were the ones that we had spent the least amount of time with,
Yes,
right?
we had
Yeah.
spent the least amount of time with them. We don't really, I know them, but you don't know them at all.
And I think I only seen
And
them 2, 3 times
yeah,
before
in
that.
our entire relationship. So they had called and they had asked us, they were like, I really feel like God was leading us to invite y'all here. And I'm not sure why, but my uncle was like, I feel like it was a multifaceted situation. And of course, immediately some of the things he was saying was completely
Mhm.
resonating with some stuff with me. And I was like, oh my gosh. It was one of those moments that was happening to me, like the flower pot situation happened to you. And I was like, oh no. Like
Oh, I remember.
I could feel God speaking again, and I'm like, I don't want to do that, right? And they were like, well, we would love to offer up our home to you. We have 2 rooms y'all can stay in. And I'm like, well, that's funny because we just lost our house and we don't have anywhere to go. And they were like, wow. Right. And he's like, well, pray
Yep.
about it, think about it, and let us know. And of course, I remember trying to talk to you about it, and you're like, I can't think about that right now because you were packing and moving stuff out of the house. And so we just kind of let it lie for a couple of days. And
Mhm.
then finally, when we were settled into Andrews, I brought it up again, and he was like, well, what do you think about that? And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I didn't want to move. I'm like, I didn't want to lose my home. I don't want to move out of Florida now that we're finally here and I love it so much. And I don't want to leave Andrew.
Mm.
I'm thinking, I just got him. I just got him and I just got into a space where I'm close to him and where I'm seeing him all the time. I'm not leaving him,
Mm.
and I'm like, and I know God's not asking me to do that. Oh, little did we know,
Mhm.
right? And Christmas comes, and the conversation is constantly back and forth, and we know, like, we're having those conversations. We know this is what we're going to have to do. We know that this
It's
is where God,
terminal.
yeah, it's terminal. It's happening. We know God's taking us. We know he's asking us to go here, and I am struggling. So after, again, like here I am, I'm all angry again, and you're just kind of like, well, this is what God says, and this is what we're doing. I love that you have such a calm resolve about it.
Mhm.
And I'm just constantly like fighting the whole way through. And, New Year comes, Andrew and Sam get engaged. Now they're going to be starting their whole life. And I'm thinking, well, we can't just be living here. Like, what does that even look like? They don't even have space for us to be here. And knowing that we're moving, but still trying to deny it. And I remember I'm like, okay, God, I need a sign. I
Mhm.
need a sign. Like, I'm not just going there. I'm not just going to do that. I'm not just like, this is a big deal for me. Like moving back to Texas, like when I left Texas, I was like, I'm not going back. And, I have a, just like when I went back to Georgia, I was like, I'm never moving back to Georgia because I got a lot of trauma there and I didn't want to move back and remind myself of all of that. And I felt the same way about coming back to Texas. And I was like, no. And, I asked God for a sign. He gave me one and I felt like that wasn't good enough.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay. And I remember praying again. I'm like, okay, well, I need something a little more concrete. And like, even asking you, I'm like, well, what are you hearing? And you're like, I'm not really hearing nothing, right? Like, I know that this is what God's asking us to do. So we're just going to do it. And I'm like, oh, no, no. I need like full on confirmation from you, right? And you're
Mhm.
like, I don't have that. And I
Yeah.
remember, my cousin had called and she was talking to me and I was like, oh, no, that definitely is my sign that this is not the right deal, right? because there was a lot of stuff going on here. And I'm like, nope,
Mhm.
I don't want to deal with any of that. And then when I had talked to you about that conversation, that's like when it clicks with you and God's like, yes, right? Gives you the confirmation. And I'm like, what? How is this
Yes.
possible? And I'm like, and now you are gung ho, right? Now it's like everything starts getting put in motion, right? And I'm like, oh no, 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 no. Like you're looking up U-Hauls, you're talking to my Uncle Brian on the phone, you're
Mhm.
having these conversations, and I'm going, oh no. And I'm struggling and I'm having anxiety. And I remember, I mean, this was just like a week before we left. And I was laying in the bed one morning
Mhm.
and I had woken up, but I was still like half asleep. And I just prayed in my head and I'm like, God, if this is what we're supposed to do, I'm like, this is too big for me to have to walk away from Andrew, to walk away from this life I thought you had brought us to, right?
Mhm.
Or that you had brought us to. Why now? And I'm going to need a yes. Like, yes, this is what you're supposed to do, Heather. Like, yes, this is what you're supposed to do. And I'm like, I'm going to need a yes. And I remember praying that in my head
Mhm.
and I had been kind of half awake. I remember I fell back asleep. This is crazy to me. When I woke back up, I look over, Sean's still asleep, and of course I pick up my phone as one does, right? And I start scrolling. And I open Instagram. As you know how like you open it and like you have the instant reels right there. And it's not turned on. I have it all the way turned down. So I'm just reading, what it says. And it's this reel of this guy and he's standing in a recording booth and he has a script. And now I can't hear it, right? So I'm just watching it. And he's standing in front of the mic and he's got his script and he's looking at the people out there and he says something like, okay, just that. And they're like, just read the script. And he looks down and when it pans to the script, there's only one word on the paper and the word is yes. And I immediately am like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And I thought, I literally out loud was like, God, there's no way this is happening to me. And I look back down and I watch him continue this reel. And it just was like, all you could see was like, yes. Like he just kept saying it. And they're kind of like, yeah, that's nice, but could you say it with a little more enthusiasm? And he was like, yes, right. And he's like, okay, well, that was great, and they just kept having him redo it over and over again. And he just kept saying, yes, yes, yes,
They're like, "Maybe without the
yes.
script this
And they're like,
time."
if you could just say it without the script, like you don't even need that. And he's like, right, it's just one word, don't need it, right? And then he's like, yeah, okay. And then he goes to say it, like, and he checks the script again to make sure it says yes. And he was like, yes. And then he gets so frustrated with them continually asking him that he just starts saying yes, like over and over and
In
over and
different
over again
ways.
in different ways. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I hear you. Got
Oh my
it.
god, that was
I
great.
got it. I remember when you woke up, I was like waiting,
As you do.
wake up so I can tell you this. Wake up. And then I tell him and he's like, well, how many signs do you need? He's like, if you ask again, like this is on you, right?
Yeah, I don't wanna be part of the punishment that comes.
Literally, in a week later, we found ourselves pulling into the driveway here in Houston, Texas,
Mhm.
right? And the journey that it has been here, there is no doubt that God called us here. There is
Mm,
no doubt that we were brought here for a reason. There, and when we look back now and we see what God is doing here, there's no doubt that He had His hand orchestrating everything from the beginning, from the beginning of our relationship and the things that have transpired. But like when He pulled us out of Georgia, that was all lining us up time, for this time to what He's doing in me, what He's doing in my work, what He's doing in you and in your work, and then what it has done in our family. Like it's just mind blowing, right? Like my uncle we were able to be with them during his whole entire first year of recovery and watching the healing that's taken place, watching the growth that has taken place with all of us, and being able to be that support for them while
mm,
they have been that support for us, and
mhm.
has given you the time to heal and work through so many things of yourself without having the pressure of actually working, right?
Yeah. Well, and the work that I did have was, like, incredibly rewarding because instead of focusing on the corporate job where you had to do the dance and play the game and climb the ladder and all the other good stuff that comes with it, I got to explore the things I was interested in. I got to start businesses. I got to try different things, and it wasn't about success or failure anymore. It was about the exploration of all of it and
Yes.
discovering, like reconnecting. It's kind of like I remember when I used to coach all the time, I'd talk to people and everyone's always so bent out of shape about like maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to do. I'm really good at this. And everybody is really quick to
Yeah.
tell you about all of their talents and their skills. And the thing that I found common amongst almost every client that I would talk to, whether they were older, younger, retired, rich, CEOs to engineers on teams, it didn't matter. They never thought that maybe if I just write down everything that I'm good at
Mhm.
on a piece of paper, and then I go find things that interest me that require these skills, that maybe it's not that this isn't the right job for me. Maybe it's this is the wrong application of the skills that I have,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
People
absolutely.
are always trying to cram themselves that square peg into a round hole
Mhm.
thing when all around them is tons of square holes that fit them perfectly. It's just they haven't realized that they don't have to follow a formula in order to find the things that they want.
Mhm.
And that's easy to say when you're in a job and you're required to have it. But I go back and I think about our entire story, even of where we started today, and I look at, the message I was given, obedience. Right. Then we get there, and the death of Ginger is like letting go and opening up, and then starting to feel this like resurgence of depression and challenges that I'd had since the military. For 20 years, I've been carrying it. And it's like you just put on a brave face, but stressors build up over time. But it's like giving way to that. Right. And being obedient to yourself and saying, like, hey, I can't do this. I need to seek more than myself to be able to solve this. Then I think about like Andrew coming and watching Andrew go through all of that, and it's like, well, if he can do it, I can do it type thing or whatever else. And then having this brand new relationship with him from the obedience of sharing how I feel, not just trying to navigate things the way I've always navigate. And then even with like we kind of glossed over it, but like it was a really pivotal moment in my life was when I went with Austin and all the stuff was happening with the house, right? There's a lot of details there. I won't go into it, but when I went with him, I got to see a side of my son that I hadn't got to know up until that point. And
Yeah, which we
and
did
that
not talk about,
and
like,
yeah,
right before we had moved to Sarasota, you got to go on a tiger cruise with Austin in the
yes.
Navy, and that was a huge thing for
Well,
you.
and he had talked about this before he even signed up for the Navy when he was contemplating the Navy. And he had
Mhm.
always been like, Dad, they have this thing called a Tiger Cruise. And if that was to ever happen, I'd want you to go or whatever. And he wanted you to go too, but you're like, not about boats or
Well,
whatever.
they also only let one of us go,
Yeah,
so
and I was like, if it ever happens, I'll be there. I don't care what it is. And it came at a pivotal moment because I had just been promoted to VP. And like the day they were going to announce this new role was the day that I was going to be getting on the plane to go get on the ship with him for 2 weeks of going out to Hawaii and then coming back to San Diego. So going there was a big, big moment for me because I got to see my son in his element, who he was, living the life he had built, the choices he had made, and what he wanted. Like he was letting me into his life,
yeah.
not just me being a part of his life because he lived with me. So me getting in his life type thing or whatever. And at that time when I was struggling with the things I was struggling with, I was still going through that and trying to find my
Mhm.
place and making other decisions, like with the house, like how all that drug out and everything that happened with that. But he made me brave in a way that I had never been able to feel brave before, like being scared of heights or whatever, and then going out there with him. And I had never been with another human being before that made me feel brave enough to conquer a fear that I had so that I didn't miss out on experiencing them.
Mhm.
And it changed everything for me when I had that experience. That week or two of time with him, from just one, getting to spend the time with him, but two, his presence making me brave to conquer things I didn't think were possible, changed the trajectory of my entire life. And he never even knew it. Right. And I think, what the power of your children, like what Andrew did for me, leaning in to who he was, and that music that he made healed me in ways that he'll never know. And then being there with Austin on the ship and climbing to the top of the largest carrier in the freaking fleet, man, and being at the tippy top as high as you're allowed to climb on these things, hundreds of feet in the air, right? Not mentioning how hundreds of feet off the water the ship already is at the deck height, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the bravery, that the courage he made me feel by being there, like watching him and just how nonchalant he was about it. Like it was just another day in his life. And, you know, dads always wanted to be like, we don't show fear because we don't want our kids to be scared. But that all fell away. And because it wasn't a thing for him, I was so locked in the moment of the time I was with him and not wanting to miss a moment of getting to see his world and who he had become, that it fell away. And it unlocked something in me. It's like, oh, well, you know, overcoming fear is less about like the exposure therapy and
Yeah.
more of like, what is the moment trying to teach us? And it changed everything for me.
I love how you said that about fear, right? It's not about the exposure of it, or, you know, like people say, white knuckling certain things to
Yeah,
get through it, but
I certainly was on the climb.
What broke a fear in you was connection.
Yes.
Like
Well said.
that's incredible.
Well said.
That's incredible.
Yeah, the love that I had, the appreciation of being given the opportunity to see his world and his view, because I feel like he's traveled our whole life and he saw the world through our eyes because of the decisions we've made and the things we've done. And now I get to see it based on the decisions that he's made. I get to see his silliness. I get to see his seriousness. I get to see him do his job and be proud of the things he does. I get to see every aspect of him from the time that we go to sleep late at night to the time we wake up early in the morning. I'm so grateful for that. And even the circumstance that happened around it with the house and like deciding where we were going to get it or not, and the rift that created or whatever, like I'm so grateful all of those things happened, because I think, one, it taught me something. Two, that obedience of giving yourself over to this moment to realize that things weren't as they seemed, right? And what that taught us about our relationships that we had with him and his wife and everything else that was going on, it allowed them to open up to express to us how they were feeling about things that were going on in their life. I think was the beginning of a lot of healing in our lives that we didn't even know we were hurt from.
Yeah.
I think it was a lot of healing for them as well, like him getting to share his life with somebody for the things he got to create, her getting to expose herself to our life and what that dynamic looked like in her relationship, of the very first relationship that was really important to her, right? Like all of those things are very profound, but at the moment were wildly painful to go through. We're fearful and very uncomfortable, right? But like, comfort is the cancer of growth, right?
Yes.
So like I've always tried to think about things like the things I fear the most, the things I don't want to do, the things I'm the most unhappy with. Those are the things I run toward because I gain the most from that. I live the most life that way.
You're adventurous that way.
I experience the depth more that way. And then I think about the house and the experience with our friends and everything they opened up and all that we got to experience, and how that opened the door for a client that we had and the experience they've had and the life that they have now because of that. And I think of this wonderful orchestration of all the things that God does in our lives. And I see them as small, painful moments that built to something wondrous that, had I not been willing to step in faith and obedience to those small, painful moments, would not be able to experience the freedom that I have now. And I listen to your podcast every week. I've only missed one in the entire time of all of the episodes that you've had. And I think about all those painful moments that you've lived your whole life and how every one of them have been a step to your freedom. And now you're using that experience to go out here and talk to an audience in a world where it's hard to connect, because this is a one-way conversation. We're sharing what we have, and we're hoping that will draw everyone in enough that we can have a conversation. Right? This isn't about pushing out content and creating things. It's about sharing an experience that says, hey, this is how we want to establish the connection. Now, how can we carry the dialogue?
It's very much so. I was thinking about it again this morning. We had that conversation in the car yesterday, and you talking now reminds me of that. It's like, I've always really struggled, like creating a business, right? Because I want to do so many things. I have so many things in me that I want to share. There's so many things I want to create and I want to put out in the world, but I have such an issue with the money, right? right?
Yeah,
Because we were,
why we gotta worry about making
you know,
money?
and it's like, well, why do I have to make money? Well, because things cost me money, right? Like it costs me quite a bit of money to do the things that I am doing, and I don't have money coming in. You know,
Okay.
I have my coaching clients, but that doesn't really pay for what I'm doing. And I have stuff that I want to get. The thing is, I want to give everything I do away for free, because in my mind and in my heart, I'm like, if I was called to do something and God has called me to share, I have experienced this life that has been tragic in so many ways, but has been so beautiful in so many ways too. I want other people to know I'm not the only one out there.
I'm not.
You're not the only one out there.
Mm,
We are all going through those tragedies of our lives every day. And that I want people to understand, and I want people to know that there is hope on the other side of that, that there is something more than
mhm,
what this is and what it looks like. And that no matter how bad it looks, no matter how bad it feels, that there is something more for you. I didn't ever think that there was.
mm.
I always thought that if you go back and you listen, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of episodes because it is just one tragic scene to the next.
Yes.
And it just, because that was my life. And while this series is long, it is honest, it is the truth, and I know that if you were to go out and you were to express your life in that way, it wouldn't look that different,
Mm.
right? In a it
No.
would just, it's different tragedies, but the
Scenarios are
same kinds
different,
of
yeah.
patterns, right? And the same kinds of struggles, but that I want you to know that there is a way to come on the other side of that. There is a way to find your real, true, authentic self in that, and to become something very beautiful.
Mhm.
That something beautiful can come from all of the things that we've experienced. And, that's why I said, like, when I do end up eventually like having to charge things for stuff that I do create, like the money that people pay me for certain things, it has to be an investment. Right? Like
Yes.
when we pay for stuff, I believe that everything that we spend money on is an investment in ourselves. And I don't want it to just be another thing. I don't want you to even come on here and listen for free if it's not helping you. I want the information that I put out in the world and the things that I give to the world to be impactful and to be an investment in somebody's life. Whether it is in your money, whether it is
Mhm.
in your time, whether it is in your effort. I don't want to just be like, oh, well, this is my life and this is now it's great. I don't want to just be like give you a whole list of tasks and things that you can do to make life better, because it's not what makes it better. It is the truth on how we get to the place to do the task that is what helps us get better. You're not going to write down, like we talked about intentions. I'm like, you're not going to write down 3 intentions and then just move about your world and your whole year change because you wrote down an intention. It has nothing to do with that.
Mhm.
It is how do we get to the place to understand what an intention is, what intention really means, and how do we actually live an intentional life? How do we connect with what that actually means for us,
Mm.
and finding where we seek value in our life, where we seek true fulfillment, and how we use that to connect not only with the world, with
Yeah.
other people, with ourselves, but with God,
Agreed.
and how we move through our life that way. And since we've been here, this is, even though our world went whoop
Mhm.
into these two tiny little rooms, everything else in our life since we've been here has expanded so greatly. God has given me the time
Agreed.
to be still enough in my spirit that I can hear that I have been given the things that I need to put out into the world in the way in which is meant for me to do,
Mhm.
because it's going to reach the people that it needs to reach. And that is my goal and that is my hope.
I love that.
And I'm so grateful that today happened. I'm so grateful that you came and you joined me here, that you opened up, that you shared. Um, it's not every day that I get to sit and do my work with you. And you
Yes.
know how much
That's
I love
nice.
that,
You know,
because I want to spend every waking moment with you.
you were saying something a minute ago, and, it triggered something in me, and very rarely do I have anything that's succinct of something I learned. Usually, I'm a storyteller by nature,
You
so
are.
I love to tell stories, and I can't just, like, give you a point and move on unless I'm in a corporate room, and then it's still very hard for me because
It's also my favorite
I
thing
want
about
you to
you.
know the context of it. But you were saying something, and I think one of the most powerful things that I've learned through this journey that we've had is it's not about the outcome. it's about the journey. And the reason why I say that, right? Because that's a platitude people use all the time or whatever else. But I
Yes.
think we use the wrong word. It's not about the journey, it's about the testimony. Because in trying to achieve the outcome is where the testimony is at. And if I focus on the outcome, I get one success, one failure, right? Like
Yep.
it's finite. It is a definitive thing that happens.
I've
If
achieved.
I
Yeah.
focus on what I learned from the testimony of trying to achieve the outcome no longer matters. And what I learn is infinitely more, because now I've learned a lot of things in the journey that just got us here, much less the time that I've had to actually reflect on what I've learned for that. But if all I was focused on was, how do I get back to the good paying corporate job? How do I get back to the stable life? How do I
Right.
get back to the lack of debt and, getting back to where the American dream is, but that outcome that I want, I'd miss all this
You miss it all.
testimony that I have. I'd miss the moments with Andrew. I'd miss the moments with Austin. I'd miss the moments with Jocelyn. I'd miss the moments with the friends that we made in Sarasota. I'd miss the moment with a friend that I have now that has been there for us in ways I would have never expected when I met him.
Well,
in the most unlikely of circumstances, right?
100%.
And I think about that, and I was like, if I continued to have focused on the outcomes of my life, I would still be in the same place. But because now I focus on the testimony, we're making progress. We're moving forward. And that excites me so much.
And thinking about even the time here, what we would have missed out on if that had been only the main focus on what God has done here with us and our family here, right? It is very much that way.
And if I look at the underlying purpose in that, and I think about all these common platitudes that we're told, the inspo that you get from every scroll that you have, there is truth behind the words. But again, like you said, it's not about writing the intention. It's what did you do to enact the intention? It's that conscious activity that has to the action that has to happen, right? Action leads to the motivation, not motivation leading to the action. So in paying attention to the testimony that we're living and to the testimony of others as we're going through it is more important than anything we're ever going to achieve, because what we learn will be infinitely more useful to help us move toward where we want to be and what will truly fulfill us than ever achieving any goal that we're trying to accomplish. It's not to say that goals aren't important. It's just goals aren't the focus.
Agreed. It's why I come on here every week and I tell everybody that your story matters, right? It's not what you've done, right? And that's the thing. It's like, no matter what you've done, no matter what you've experienced, no matter how bad things have looked, is that freedom is the advantage you already own. It is something that you can have. You just have to be willing to reach out and grab it. And that's all I want to be able to continue to do in my life, because sometimes, you have to understand, it's not like, oh, we've reached this pinnacle of freedom. I have to reach out and choose freedom every single day.
Yes.
Every single day. The days still come. The challenges still come. And I'm never going to reach the end of that.
Well, it's not an outcome.
It's not.
It is, like, freedom is your testimony.
Freedom is your testimony, and that's the life I want to live. I want to live one of freedom. I don't want to live one of a constant sacrifice like I've done before. And that's what I want for everybody out there. That's why I'm here. That's why I do what I do, and why I will continue to do what I do. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Sean, for coming on here and being here. I love you so much. It was a pleasure having you here. I look forward. Come back next week, because I'm going to have a new guest on and you're going to hear a whole new story, and you can get rid of mine. I love you guys, and thanks for listening. Until next time.